Hi guys, how's it going? In this video, I'm afraid, bring you more bad news, as Britain's meat industry in particular has warned on Friday that an impending shortage of carbon dioxide could cause massive disruption to food supplies within 2 weeks. Now, before we get to it, please remember to press the subscribe and bell notification button. Guys, I really can't emphasize enough how closely correlated your actions are with keeping this channel going. And by the way, the share button to annoy your Brexit mates, especially in those marginal constituencies, can really help to halt the decline into the economic oblivion that is now unfortunately staring at us right in the face. So let's go. Now, though many of you are going to jump all over this news and describe it as a result of Brexit, let me tell you that you're wrong, okay? It's a worldwide shortage of CO2, and it has nothing to do with Brexit, and it's mostly to do with the massive increase in natural gas as that commodity prices has gone up ridiculously. I don't know how it goes up there. And it's one of the main cost factors of producing CO2, okay? We know that Britain's food supply chain is already creaking from an acute shortage of HGV drivers and is heavily reliant on fertilizer producers for CO2. Now, because CO2 is a byproduct of their production process, and CO2 is used extensively in all food processing and in the meat industry. However, two of the largest fertilizer companies, Norway's Yara and rival CF Industries Holdings, have curbed production due to a surge in natural gas prices, which has in turn started to dry up the CO2 supplies. So stock up your beer for Christmas, boys, okay? Nick Allen, chief executive of the British Meat Processors Association, said that once current stocks of the gas run out, now once the stocks they have in their factories run out, some meat companies will have to stop taking animals and close production lines, leading to a logjam of animals not in the abattoirs but back on the farms. And the problem that causes is the farmers have already allocated the amount of covered space they have for animals during the winter, because you don't see cows out on the grass during the winter, guys. They take them in, okay? So they have a limited amount of space. If they can't get the animals to the abattoirs, they have a problem. Now, just in case you think any of you out there that this may be alarmist, in his meeting with Kwasi Kwarteng, he reminded them that we already have this situation in the pig industry, which is now facing and has already begun the imminent prospect of a humane cull on the farms. Okay, it's already started. Britain also suffered a major CO2 shortage in 2018, leading to some of the drinks wholesalers to ration sales. Okay, so again, remind you, get the beer in. CO2 is simply a byproduct of the production of fertilizers, which is then used after purification in the industries you're seeing on your screen right now. Now, in the meat processing plants, they use it to anesthetize, for want of a better word, the animals. Now, I'm not going to comment on the arguments surrounding the use of CO2 in the abattoirs, as that is a discussion for an entirely different platform, an entirely different channel. Anybody who wishes to comment on it, keep it polite. It's up to you, but I won't be responding. What we can comment on, however, is just how precarious the ledge of the UK's manufacturing industry. Okay, it's resting on a very thin piece of ice, and it really calls into the question the following: in the UK's rush to nationalise everything from electricity to transport in order to give a short-term boost to the exchequer, why did they not realise that shortages such as this only highlight the extent of mismanagement? Because that's what's caused this, mismanagement. There's a widely held belief that public bodies cannot be run as efficiently as private bodies. Why not? The funding requirements are identical, the facilities required are identical, the locations are identical, so the only variable is the production rates per staff member, and which, if properly managed, should be the same. So it comes down to management of the people, not the investment in the product, not the investment in the facilities, okay? Now, many may say, so what? Well, here's so what. Those sites in Billingham and Wilton referred to earlier were at one time regarded as the most important manufacturing plants in the UK, were once owned and operated by the famous ICI. During World War II, it powered the arms production that was desperately needed, but after the war was essential in the production of fertilizers for the desperately neglected farming industry. Okay? Now, before anybody forgets this, let's not forget or let it slip our mind that food rationing in the UK existed up to 10 years after World War II, just 20 years before joining the EEC. Let's also not forget that before the Industrial Revolution, we had the Agricultural Revolution. We could not have had the industrial without the agricultural. And the UK led the Industrial Revolution because it was able to produce more food than it needed to feed its people. Okay? Today, that's not the case. The UK is lucky to be able to get to about 40% of its food consumption is produced in the UK. Just 40%. Today, those two plants that were once the bastion of English industry are now in foreign hands and have been closed by a decision made outside of the UK. Okay, this cessation has been replicated in most of the UK's production facilities. Now, this is where Brexit raises its ugly head. If you were the CEO of one of those foreign-owned companies and you have a limited amount of production capacity, will you A, divert production to the plants where you know there are no labour shortages, where you know there are no transport issues, or will you B, divert it to plants that you hope will have no labour shortages, or you hope will have no transport shortages? The UK government, on the other hand, cannot second production. They cannot nationalise an industry in foreign hands. It's just got too many repercussions. So the UK government can no longer also go to the EU and demand action against monopolistic type industry. Okay, which is what's going to happen. It's just basically another example of how short-sighted Brexit really was and how cavalier those Farage fools and Boris buffoons were with the very livelihoods of UK citizens. So what's going to happen now? Well, the UK can authorise another, perhaps less humane way of the slaughtering process. However, this will have one or more of three effects. One, the animal rights group will freak out. Two, the cost of meat will skyrocket. And three, the abattoirs will require immediate funding to alter those production facilities. Okay? Now, as option three is hardly going to happen now anytime soon, we are left with the absolute inevitable conclusion that option one and option two are a given. But this doesn't solve the immediate problem. You see, CO2 in animal processing is just one use, okay? And it allows animals to be killed in groups rather than individually. But when you change that process, it will slow down the production process considerably and provide the need for even more staff. That adds to the already existing staff shortages, we are already seeing. So no matter what way you cut it or what way you slice it, if you forgive the pun, the cost of meat is going to skyrocket. But we also must recognize that in fresh food, the use of CO2 is absolutely essential to prolong the shelf life. Now, when you have a shortage of HGV drivers and fresh produce is being delayed, and now you don't have CO2 to lengthen that shelf life, it's the camel that breaks the straw rather that breaks the camel's back. This is disastrous. Coming up to Christmas, disastrous. Importers are screaming for drivers and for haulage contractors to bring in their goods, and haulage drivers are saying, bugger that, we have easier work elsewhere. We're not going to risk getting held up at the borders. So what many of you don't realize is that goods coming in from France or in from Ireland are being checked on the French side and on the Irish side, though being ignored on the UK side. They're still getting checked. EU is still running their systems. Okay, you know, so the only way to compensate for the restriction of the availability of the drivers is to pay them more. And I mean a lot more for imported meat. But that just creates a shortage somewhere else in the chain. And this part is very important. If you're a beef producer in France or a beef producer in Ireland, would you think it would be a hell of a lot more beneficial to your company if you said to your UK customers, guys, bro, hello, we can sell you your beef, but we're no longer going to sell you the complete carcasses. We will instead sell you the products already processed into sections. Thereby, that will increase their downline profit returns. Well, of course you're going to do that, especially if you don't have, if you do have the capacity and don't have the labor shortages that face everybody else in the UK. Guys, though foreign producers will suffer the same shortages in CO2 production, they will not even consider powering up plants that have other restricting factors outside of their control. Guys, thanks for watching. See you on the flip side. Bye-bye.